Hey, this is Lucas. I'm a UFA certified football coach and a doctor in sports psychology. Today we're going to talk about asking players questions. What if the key to a better team is not about tactics or technique? Too often coaches are telling players what to do, but what if we ask them what they think? So the first question is, why should we ask the players for their input? This is all about empowerment. Just giving the players the voice because they're the ones on the pitch. They're the ones feeling the opposition, feeling the game. So it's very important for us to also try to understand the limits from their eyes and from their perspective. The second point also is around motivation. By giving the players a platform and making sure that they are being heard, it's another way for us to motivate them to try harder. Would you like players who were just able to do one, two things? But what about when a challenge becomes different or a tactical change from the opposition? We want players who are able to think, to see, analyze the situation, and then come up with their own strategies to ensure that we can be victorious. These are a few steps on how to actually get this done. So the first idea for us is to create a positive environment. By positive environment, I mean to create an environment where the players are free from criticism from each other, free from criticism from the other coaches and from the people involved. Very often we can see players being shut down by coaches or shut down by their teammates whenever they're coming up with an idea or they raise their hand for a suggestion. So let's make sure that we are welcoming these questions. We are opening moments, we're creating these moments in order to allow them to express what they're feeling, giving them the feeling of control. Another way to do this is around in asking open-ended questions. We just don't want to give them the false sense of ownership or ability to think in the sense of just giving them a yes or no question, or do you like the blue exercise or the green exercise? But instead we're asking open questions in terms of, this is a situation that's going on. What do you think is the best way to solve it? So some examples that I actually learned this, I wouldn't say the hard way, but I learned this from my experience. In order to always thinking that I knew better, that I knew the best drills and I knew what was the best for my team. But there was a few situations in my career where my players actually spoke up to me and then let me know what was going on with them in terms of, like, for example, I had a season in Sweden where a player of mine came to me after a couple weeks and he said, like, Coach, we always do the same exercise for the warm-up and everyone's kind of feeling a little bored because of it. But in my perspective, I was really excited about the routine that I had created, and I was so happy that it was looking good. It was covering every joint and every muscle group that was involved in the session. So because of that, I thought in the beginning of my career that I wanted to repeat that because it was a way for us to get everything done. So, but if it wasn't for my players to come out and say, Coach, can you please do something different or do some variations because we're doing the same thing and we're just getting bored. Another example that I have, it was in my time in England when we were playing this league game against our biggest rivals. We were losing the game 1-0 by halftime. And then right when the players were coming out to the dugouts, my midfielder came to me and he said, Coach, please, can we invert the triangle in the midfield? Because every time I'm dealing with two people and it would be better for us to have two holding midfielders and just one attacking midfield so we can match their midfield. And then I understood the point that he was making, but it was something that I didn't notice very much. I thought he was able to cope with it. And then right away we made the change. We communicated the change during the halftime. When we came back in, it was completely working for us. We made sure that we were matching up in the midfield and turned the game around, winning 3-1. So that was an example for me actually listening to a player on something that I didn't even realize, I didn't even observe myself in the midfield, or something I noticed and I didn't think it was a big of a problem, but it was for my player. I created that environment to allow them to come and express what they were thinking in terms of saying what it is that they need. But here are some challenges when it comes to open your sessions to listen to what players are saying. Not because you're just listening to them and everything is going to be right, they're going to know the exact moments on when to tell you or give you a suggestion about what they need. So some of the challenges that can happen when you're opening up for question is that, number one, your players can be feeling that you don't want to make decisions and you're actually deferring the decisions to them. So one day I had two players coming in late. The policy for that club, the idea was if you came late for the game, then you wouldn't start the match, and that would put the backup player. However, the backup player also came in late and kind of like neutralized it. So I thought about, what about just giving them the ownership for making that decision of who has to play? And then I turned to them and I said, well, both of you came late. You know, the policy is that whoever comes late cannot start. What is it that I'm supposed to do? I want you guys to decide. So the players are competitive. They're looking for a spot in pro clubs. So they all wanted to start. They went quiet. They look at each other and they never made a decision because each one of them kind of thought about the situation and they understood that it was potentially better for the other one to play, but at the same time, they wanted to be the ones getting the start. So one of them turned to me and said, Coach, it's a decision for you to make. And then I replied back, I know what I'm gonna say. I know about my decision, but I wanted just to hear from you guys on what you guys think is correct. And then again, they all went quiet. It was an awkward 30 seconds there. They never said anything, and I ended up making the decision. So sometimes the players might think that they might know the answer. They might have an idea of what is fair, what's not. But at the same time, they have their own interest that they don't want to put it aside because they are prioritizing themselves. And that's not a wrong thing when it comes to the situation where they want to become professionals and they want to get the start. So I do understand. So we need to know some of these moments to make those decisions. When you open the floor up for suggestions, for players to give opinions, for players to say what they're thinking, sometimes, and I would say more often than not, they actually might take advantage of it. So because you open once or twice, they might believe that they should be telling what they think all the time. They should be telling what the suggestions on changing the defenders for an attacker or moving this person from the left to the right, which can be quite annoying and not very productive. So the good idea there is to make sure that you are giving them specific moments where they make decisions. The biggest thing when it comes to empowering your players to speak up what they're thinking, to giving suggestions, is about separating the needs versus the wants. So that's a very important thing for coaches to discern, because very often they're going to say what they want. So for example, you're winning a game for 4-0 and then you know the defenders also want to score. They're going to come to you and say, Coach, can I play on the attack today? Or can you move me from this side to this side? So right away you can see that the only desire behind that suggestion is because they just want to score, because they saw all of their teammates scoring. So that's clearly a want and not exactly a need. But if you go back to my example where my midfielder was struggling to cope with two men in the midfield, and he came to me and said, Coach, can we invert the triangle so defending midfielder is matched up with everybody else? So you could see that it was coming more from a need versus a want. So how can we actually discern the needs from the wants? The first thing that I look at is about who that message is coming from. So with time, you're going to realize that some of the players, they have big mouth. Then they're suggesting, they're giving their opinion, and they're talking to you about everything on the field. So whenever it's coming from them, it's kind of crying the wolf type of situation where you have an idea that it might be more of a want than a need because of the frequency that they do it. However, there's some players that they don't really suggest things very often. They don't communicate very often, but when they come to you, it's because they really need it. So it is something that for you to take into consideration. Who is that suggestion coming from? The second thing about discerning the needs from the wants is about the body language. So read their face and their facial reaction. No matter where you coach in the world, boys, girls, in the left to the right, south or northern hemisphere, it doesn't matter. People are very similar in the way that whenever there is a want, there's kind of like a smirk on the side, a little bit of a smile, and they're asking something in a very exciting way. Versus when the needs come, the needs are more in the eyes of a desperation, in the eyes of like, Coach, like the eyes are big, and then they say to you very clearly, looking at you straight away, in order for you to understand that it's a need because they cannot cope with the number of players that they were playing against, for example. So to conclude this video is the ultimate job of a coach is to make the decisions. So I'm not telling you to defer all your decisions to your players. The idea is to acknowledge their points, acknowledge their thoughts and their thinking, especially in this new generation. We're much more prone to speaking their minds and giving their opinions. listen to them, but you don't necessarily need to do what they're asking. So it's on you to discern the ones from the needs and make sure that you are making the decisions that are best for the team. Sometimes players can ask you for a need, but you can see the overall picture and then make the decision in, look, no, let's try to stick with this because maybe they just thought about their position, but they didn't think about how moving those midfielders would kind of harm the attacking players. In the end of the day, you're the one making those decisions and you have to deal with them. The more often you make those decisions, more you become aware and you keep making better decisions over and over again. But sometimes you have to make some mistakes in order for you to learn and then potentially not make that mistake again. So trust yourself, but also trust your players, open up the floor for them because they have a lot of insights to give you. So what is it that you're gonna do when you go back into your training ground? Who are you gonna ask? What questions are you gonna ask? What moments are you give them the platform to speak? And are you ready to discern the needs from the wants? Well, I wanna see it. Peace.